Ruwa Zimbabwe, September 16th, 1994. There was perhaps one of the most remarkable mass UFO sightings of all time. 62 students at the Ariel school, aged between 6 and 12, claimed that they saw one or more silver flying crafts descend from the sky and land on a field near their school. Now, before I share the rest of that story with you, which is mind-blowing, we're going to look into the psychic element to these UFO encounters. Many witnesses claim that there's a presence to these UFOs, and many of them experience weird dreams and nightmares after they experience them. And this is actually how I got into this topic as a Christian. I was only saved for about a year when I was given the opportunity to minister to a young man who had a terrible encounter with a UFO, and he said that he felt like they were in his mind and that there was nowhere where he could go to hide from them. And as I looked further into some of these UFO sightings, there's a very interesting commonality there. Many of the people claim that there's a psychic element to them. Even the Tic Tac incident back in 2004, check this out. Now let's revisit the Tic Tac sighting off the Nimitz back in 2004. Commander David Fravor reports that when he saw this craft, the craft disappeared, then in a matter of seconds appeared 60 miles away at his cap point, which is a predetermined set of coordinates where he was to fly. How did this craft know his cap point? And what may be even more provocative is the story that the radar operator tells. Let me introduce to you Kevin Day. He was the anti-air warfare coordinator. His job is to identify any aircraft in the sky. The day of the Tic Tac encounter, Kevin Day's radar picked up a few craft that were flying in ways that would seem to defy all the laws of physics. In response to these anomalous craft, he decided to run a diagnostic on the radar equipment. After powering everything back up, these craft seemed to be even more clear on the radar system. Kevin Day reports that he became very concerned with these anomalous craft and recommended that they deploy David Fravor to go intercept these aircraft. Now, there are two different psychic elements to this one. Number one, the Tic Tac UFO actually knew where Commander Fravor's cap point was going to be. How did they know that? But number two was Kevin Day. Kevin Day reports that after this incident, he began to have very, very disturbing dreams. He reports that he felt that something really bad was about to happen. And he describes his dreams as apocalyptic in nature, that there were huge earthquakes and tsunamis that were coming upon this earth. And one of his concerns was, as he said, what if what happened to me happened to everybody on this earth at the same time? Now, there was another UFO sighting that took place in 1973 that was accompanied by very vivid dreams afterwards. This one was initially investigated by Jenny Zeidman of Project Blue Book. Check this out. In the sky over Mansfield, Ohio, a four-man crew of an Army Reserve helicopter encountered what they referred to as a cigar-shaped craft. The crew reports they almost had a mid-air collision with this craft. To corroborate this story, there were also witnesses on the ground that saw the same thing. One of the crew members, Sergeant Healy, just like Kevin Day of the USS Nimitz case, started having strange nightmares. Here is a direct quote. I dreamt that my spirit or whatever was floating, looking down at me, lying in bed. And the only thing that upset me was I was worried about what would happen to my two boys. What exactly is happening here? Are these dreams a product of the experience, or is it just an overactive mind, or maybe even pizza dreams? There always seems to be this evasive and psychic element to this entire phenomenon. We have really compelling and credible witness testimony, but we never get hard and actual proof. Could this be because whoever seems to be operating these craft aren't exactly from the same reality as we are? Or maybe they experience reality very different. Let's go to the Bible to get some answers. Now, if you're familiar with the Bible at all, you know that God created an entire race of different entities that we refer to as angels. Now, we conclude that there was one of these angels that sinned against God and was actually kicked out of heaven. His name is Lucifer, and he spends his time trying to deceive mankind. Although this rebellious angel does not have access to heaven anymore, it is definitely implied that he lives in a different realm above the earth. The book of Psalms in chapter 8, verse 4 through 5 gives us more insight about this dimension. What is man that you are mindful of him, and the Son of Man that you visit him? For you have made him a little lower than the angels, and you have crowned him with glory and honor. The rest of this psalm goes on to talk about how God gave man dominion over this earth, not the angels. Is it possible that modern day physics is finally catching up to what the Bible has been teaching us all along? Many ufologists believe in something called interdimensional hypothesis.
Or are we really dealing with something that's a paradigm moment for our species and dealing with something completely different?
The interdimensional hypothesis is a hypothesis advanced by ufologists such as Jacques Vallée, which states that unidentified flying objects and related events involve visitations from other realities or dimensions that coexist separately alongside our own. It is not necessarily an alternative to the extraterrestrial hypothesis, since the two hypotheses are not mutually exclusive, so both could be true simultaneously. Interdimensional hypothesis also holds that UFOs are a modern manifestation of a phenomenon that has occurred throughout recorded human history, which in prior ages were ascribed to mythological or supernatural creatures.
My personal belief is that there is very compelling evidence that we may not be alone.
The Bible has been teaching us all along that there's another dimension and that there are unseen powers. The Apostle Paul refers to the rulers of the darkness of this age and of spiritual hosts of wickedness in high places. If these fallen angels live in a different dimension that humans don't have access to, what does that imply? Now, looking at the ministry of Jesus, he spent a lot of time casting out these supernatural beings that we call demons. Somehow, some way, these demons gain access to the human mind and try to influence our behavior. And we learn from the story of Judas Iscariot that Satan himself actually has the ability to enter a human. And the book of Revelation actually affirms this because eventually Satan actually enters the Antichrist. In the book of 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 verses 9 through 12 tells us this about the Antichrist. The coming of the lawless one is according to the working of Satan, with all power, signs, and lying wonders, and with all unrighteous deception among those who perish, because they did not receive the love of the truth that they might be saved. And for this reason, God will send them strong delusion, that they should believe the lie, that they all may be condemned who do not believe the truth, but had pleasure in unrighteousness. There is a lie coming that will deceive the entire world. And remember Kevin Day, he was concerned about what if this happened to everybody at the same time. Nobody knows exactly how this all plays out. But what if everybody on this earth actually believed that there were other creatures out there? They could even deceive humanity and get people to believe that the Christian God of the Bible is not true and that they created us. So going back to Kevin Day and his apocalyptic dreams, I wonder if there is a connection to this mass sighting that happened at the Ariel school in Zimbabwe. Check this out. The sighting at Ariel occurred at 10 a.m. on September 16th, 1994, when the students were outside playing on a mid-morning break. The adult faculty at the school were inside having a meeting at the time. The entire incident lasted about 15 minutes. When the children returned to class, they told the teachers what they had seen, but they were dismissed. When they returned home that night, they told their parents. Many of those parents came to the school the next day to discuss what had happened with the faculty. The sighting was reported on by ZBC Radio, from where Cynthia Hind learned all about it. Hind visited the school the next day. She interviewed the children and asked them to draw pictures of what they had seen. She reported that the children all told her the same story. The BBC's correspondent in Zimbabwe, Tim Leach, visited the school on September 19th to film interviews with the students, staff, and Hind. After investigating this incident, Leach claimed, "I could handle war zones, but I could not handle this." That November, Harvard University professor of psychiatry John Mack visited the Ariel school to interview the witnesses. Throughout the 1990s, Mack had investigated UFO sightings and had a particular interest in the alien abduction phenomenon. According to the interviews of Hind, Leach, and Mack, 62 children between the ages of 6 and 12 claim to have seen at least one UFO. Now, not all the children at the school claimed a sighting. The basic details of the sighting were quite consistent, although not all the details were. One or more silver objects, usually described as discs, appeared in the sky. Then they floated down to a field of brush and small trees just outside the school property. Between 1 and 4 creatures with big eyes and dressed in all black exited the craft and approached the children. At this point, many of the children ran, but some, mostly older, stayed and watched the approach. According to Mack's interviews, the creature or creatures then telepathically communicated to the children an environmental message before returning to the craft and flying away. In John Mack's interviews, one 5th grader tells how he was warned about something that was going to happen and that pollution mustn't be. An 11-year-old girl told Mack, "I think they want people to know that we're actually making harm on this world and we mustn't go and get too technologed." Another child said that he was told that the world would end because they were not taking care of the planet. So imagine a world where everybody on the planet, minus the true Christians, actually believed that there was an extraterrestrial race out there that wanted to help and even save humanity. Well, there are several people out there that are telling us just this. I'll call them false prophets, but one of these guys is Dr. Stephen Greer. Stephen Greer is the founder of the Disclosure Project, and he is the guy that's behind CE5 Contact. CE5 Contact stands for Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, which is initiated contact with extraterrestrials. Stephen Greer has created a protocol that guarantees that you will contact extraterrestrials if you are open-minded. Stephen Greer claims that he is in contact with extraterrestrials. He says they are friendly and want to help us, but we are not ready for them. He says we need to be open-minded and trust them. He says that they have technology that can save the human race. Is it possible that the political green agenda and the spiritual movement of contacting other entities come together and are a huge part of the strong delusion that God tells us in 2 Thessalonians?
The scale and scope of the threat we face call for a global systems-level solution based on radically transforming our current fossil fuel-based economy to one that is genuinely renewable and sustainable.
We're decades into the solutions for poverty in the environment, decades into the ability to have a new economy that would be just, and also would be a space economy. We could be out in space peaceful. If these technologies were being used for peaceful energy generation, and by the way, these same technologies that can create Havana syndrome type bad effects can be used for healing. It would be if you took everything that's been invented since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution to now, 150, 200 years, choo-choo trains, all the way to what we have now that we call high tech, that isn't, frankly. Put all of that together, the implications of this area of science, technology, energy, transportation, communication, healing, medicine, what have you, would eclipse all of that combined.
We are here to assist the human race and give you life-changing technology. We only want to help bring this world to a higher level of being.
The whole idea that these beings are coming with some type of high technology, that if we can understand it, if we can re-engineer it, this high technology would save this planet. It would just make for free energy. It would make for all sorts of cures, okay? They're offering what looks like special knowledge because of this phenomenon. And people are getting sucked into this. The communications that people are having with these beings, the contact experience, the CE5 experience, which is taking off like crazy right now. People want to communicate mentally in their minds with these so-called beings. What are they looking for? Special knowledge.
Will we act? Will we do what is necessary? Will we seize the enormous opportunity before us? Or will we condemn future generations to suffer? The science is clear. We only have a brief window left before us to raise our ambitions and to meet the task that's rapidly narrowing.
The COVID-19 pandemic has shown us just how devastating a global cross-border threat can be. Climate change and biodiversity loss are no different. In fact, they pose an even greater existential threat, to the extent that we have to put ourselves on what might be called a warlike footing, to act with all dispatch and decisively, because time has quite literally run out. With a growing global population creating ever-increasing demand on the planet's finite resources, we have to reduce emissions urgently and take action to tackle the carbon already in the atmosphere. As we tackle this crisis, our efforts cannot be a series of independent initiatives running in parallel. The scale and scope of the threat we face call for a global systems-level solution based on radically transforming our current fossil fuel-based economy to one that is genuinely renewable and sustainable. So, ladies and gentlemen, my plea today is for countries to come together to create the environment that enables every sector of industry to take the action required. We know this will take trillions, not billions of dollars.
So I'm not exactly sure how all of this plays out, but I do want to hear from you and your point of view down in the comment section below. So the Bible prophesies this very strange and interesting time where the whole world will believe a lie and follow one man who we call the Antichrist. And in light of that, I want to encourage you to stay close to God through his son, Jesus Christ, in these very interesting and changing times that we live in. And as far as the Detox Babylon YouTube channel goes, I have no idea what's going to come next, but I would love to have you along for the journey. God bless, go forth and bear some fruit.